I think we're live. Awesome.
Yay!
Yay! Hello, everybody. This is the Renegade Society Radio, and we have a very special guest today with us. We have Daniel Solis, who is an incredible designer who's made lots of fun stuff, including a couple of our upcoming games like John Corbett and also Wonderland, coming to friendly local stores everywhere for International Tabletop Day. So Daniel, welcome. How are you?
Hello. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Yay! It's awesome. Yeah, you are a very prolific designer and you've had an awesome career in gaming and done lots of really cool stuff. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
Hi.
I design too many games. I guess first thing is that I'm an art director and graphic designer by trade. That's my day job. But nowadays I do that in the gaming industry. So I design rule books and cards and stuff. And I have a little YouTube show that some folks may have seen, where I teach how to use InDesign and basics of card design in general. But as far as my games go, probably my biggest game right now is Kodama the Tree Spirits. Before that, the biggest game was probably Belle of the Ball, a little fancy schmancy card game about inviting guests to rival parties. But probably the thing that I'm most excited to talk about is the brand new stuff, Junk Orbit and Wonderland.
Those are pretty exciting. But we'll get to those in a minute. So
okay.
I know you're super excited. So how did you get to the point where you were designing games in the first place? Because you have made quite a few games, and Kodama, of course, is amazing. It was really a breakout hit for you. So how did you get from being a normal person to being an amazing game designer?
I wouldn't categorize it as amazing, but I don't know. I just design games. Basically, I think I got my start way back as a kid, and I was playing chess a lot with my stepdad, who kind of wanted to bond with me. And so we played chess a lot. And I was very young, and he was very patient with me because I kept on losing, and so I just kept on designing new chess pieces and adding them to my own side until I could win.
Like ones that did different things?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
But like little things, and it was nothing good, but it was that thing of like, I'm not winning the normal game. I may as well design a game I can win. And my stepdad was like very, very patient with me doing that. But that was kind of where I got started. And I did a lot of abstract designs back in college. And I posted them on my blog at the time. And then from there, it was a little bit of role-playing games, but pretty quickly I realized like role-playing games were not really the structure that I wanted, or didn't have the structure that I wanted. And I really liked the idea of board games and card games in particular, because of the design constraints that they afforded. And I really liked that structure and having to work within a certain deck size or a certain size of card, and kind of how many ways can that card be used as a physical component. And that, of course, led to the wacky idea of like, oh, what if these cards had little branching paths on them, and then you just lay them on top of each other, and then you made kind of a little tree shape on your table. And that was where originally the game was called Kigi, and then it got picked up. And then that was redeveloped significantly, and I think much improved into what's now called Kodama.
That's amazing. Very cool. So I'm curious, RPGs are so incredibly different than what you make now, because they're very story driven, and like you said, there's no constraints at all. And you really make a lot of more abstract games that, like you said, mostly are card games, although you have branched out since then. But how did you, I guess a better question is, if you were to design an RPG now that you have a little bit more experience, what would you want that to look like?
Short.
Yeah.
I think was the recurring thing. I have two story games. It's more appropriate to call them story games rather than role-playing games, probably, if I had to be snooty or weird about it. But mainly the two role playing games that I did have were published by Evil Hat Productions way back in the day, and they were first Happy Birthday Robot, which was a game where three players, or I think more than that, would basically tell a story about this character named Robot and Robot's birthday, and it would be told in the sort of this one structure where every round was one sentence, and the first player would say would roll a die, and that would be how many words that they could say, and then that would be followed by and the next player would roll their dice, and that would be how many words that they could say, and that would be followed by but. And then the third player would close out the sentence with however many words that they could say, and then they would cycle around to each player with each sentence being another round. And by the end of it, it was like a full cycle, and you just had this little very weird kid's story at the end of it. That it was sort of told in this really bizarre structure. So it was more like a storytelling exercise rather than this like a role playing game, because no one made characters, there was no stats per se, but there was a structure to it, and there was like turns, and then the next game I did was sort of similar but less like explicitly verbally constrained, but it was called Pilgrims of the Flying Temple, and it was. And that one's big thing was this chit pull mechanic where you had black stones and you drew 3 stones out of a bag, and you chose one either the black stones or the white stones that you drew. And if it was bizarre. It was, anyway, I approached every one of these role-playing games as this very like structured sort of exercise. And at one point, another designer, I think said to someone else, but like they told me that they were saying, I'm trying to remember the comment. I don't think Daniel likes role-playing games.
Oh no!
And that may have been clear from the way I was designing role-playing games.
You're trying to trick people into playing board games by labeling them as role-playing.
I guess, yeah. But then after that I just decided to own it. And like, okay, yeah, I like board games. I want a game in a box, not a book. But that experience working in role-playing games, and especially doing production on them, was very, very informative, I think, because it gave me the experience in the business to understand like the limited budgets that are in this industry, and like the passion that you have to bring to this hobby. In every single project in order to see it to fruition, because like that you don't like do this unless you love it, and so I realized like I'm still doing it like 15 years later. I must love it. I can't stop doing it.
It's so true. Like, you're in the right job when you wake up every morning and that's the only thing that you think about, and you're just so excited to get out of bed and do it. And I know that a lot of people in this industry feel that way, and it makes it a really cool place to be, just surrounded with so many passionate people. But that's really interesting about your role-playing stuff. And I think that we're at a really cool time in the board game industry right now, where there's this awesome blend between role-playing and storytelling and actual traditional board games. And we really saw that in Pandemic Legacy, that there was this desire for there to be a bigger picture, a bigger story that we were all telling together. So I'm curious to see if you ever kind of come full circle and go back to that again. I think that'd be fun. But if you really just don't like it, then there's that too.
Sometimes I think about doing I had this weird idea that I've had in the back, in like the way back burner, of doing a legacy card game inspired by Downton Abbey.
Wow, that's pretty specific.
Yeah, it's like I was super into Downton Abbey at the time when I was like thinking about this. So I was like, oh, like every round is like this little tea party that is gonna go completely wrong, and that was like, this is like years before like tea party became like a real hot theme. So I was like, oh man, I missed the scoop on that one.
Oh no. Yeah, we do have the Tea Dragon Society coming out. So
yeah, that's really good stuff. Love that art.
It's beautiful. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Well, we did have a few really good questions in chat that I don't want to let them get too far away. So Shem Phillips is in the chat with us, and hi Shem. It's awesome to have him here. He's the designer of Raiders of the North Sea, in case you've checked out that one. And he wanted to ask, he wants to know about the design community in your area. And I think he's probably asking this for his own local area in New Zealand, like how to set up a design community. But we were chatting before the show started about how last weekend we were at Unpub and you helped design, organize having all of the designers in your area wear the same t-shirts, which is pretty cool. So he asked, do you meet up with other designers on a regular basis? Where do you get most of your public playtesting done? So do you want to chat a little bit about your amazing local group?
Sure. First off, full credit for all the organization and stuff should really go to Matt Wolf. He's a designer of a game called Wombat Rescue, which is really cool.
That game is so fun.
Yeah. And he's been for going on 5 years now, he's been spearheading the organization for the guild, and it wouldn't be where it is now unless he was there to be the centralizing force. And now, in the past 5 years, it was fortunate that I happened to be in the area when the guild was first forming. I had just moved into town within a few months of that formation, and so I haven't been there right from the start, but pretty close to it. And it's been pretty rapid growth, all things considered. We have essentially two locations that are more or less chapters. There's a lot of flow between the two chapters because they're far enough that people who live in one part of the area can go to this one store for those meetings, and others go to the other one. But there's a lot of going back and forth. If you really want to double up, have 4 meetings in a single month, you could do it with our group.
Wow.
If you don't mind a drive. And I think there's going to be a 3rd chapter forming soon. But as far as how it's organized, a lot of it is just, I think, a concentration of people who are in the who are gaming adjacent, I guess would be the best way to describe it. We have a lot of tech people. We have a lot of biotech and pharma in the region, and then on top of that, we have several smaller video game studios that are nearby. Of course, they're going to be into gaming. And then on top of all of that, we have very good game store in Atomic Empire in Durham, and Gamers Armory up in Cary. Those are our 2 meeting locations. And they've been very supportive of the community and allowing us to meet there and kind of take over the store whenever we do have a meeting. It's a confluence of organization and region and stores that are allowing that to be really facilitated. Whether that can be replicated elsewhere is harder to say. I know Toronto has a very, very organized game design guild over there, and that's who we initially modeled ourselves after. So it's a little surreal to hear the feedback from Unpub, where we showed up with our t-shirts, and people think that we're super, super organized. It's all come full circle again.
Well, how many people were wearing the North Carolina Gaming Guild t-shirts at Unpub, do you think? 20? It seemed like I saw them everywhere.
Yeah, we get around. It was, I think the group photo had 12, maybe 15 people.
Awesome.
And everybody there that was wearing the shirt was either a guild member or a frequent enough attendee and playtester that they're basically guild members. And so
do you like that? Really, do you get ideas from both the game designers that are showing up and the playtesters? Could you really make your games without those groups?
Me, no. It's the I think it's a fortunate thing that and honestly a privilege that I have, that I can test my games so frequently, when I think it's a pretty common experience for most designers when they're kind of working alone. If they have their own circle of friends that are willing to test their games, it's easy to wear out that goodwill. Especially if you're like putting a game in its very nascent stages that kind of falls apart in its first play. It's easy to spend that social currency with your friend group by putting out a game that doesn't quite work too frequently. Very, very few and very rare is the player who's willing to help you like play this thing out multiple times until they're as sick of it as you are. But the guild is fantastic for that. The guild is just I can't say enough kind things about them.
That's awesome. And I think that that's a really good point for anyone else who's working on game design or working on, your own prototypes at home, is get out there and find other people who are doing this thing too, because there are only so many times that your family and friends can play it, and you're going to get the same feedback over and over again. You're just in a bubble. So getting these honest people who have different ideas than you do, who are willing to tell you what's working, what's not, is just so important. And Unpub was great for that. So we were all at Unpub last weekend, and it's a really cool event for those that don't know, because basically it's this enormous room just full of people who have rented individual tables and are showing off their game designs and specifically asking for feedback from anyone who wants to show up and play them. And since they are prototypes, they're going to be a little wonky. You're going to find some gems. You're going to find some games that are not for you, or maybe just need some more work. But it's really cool to see them before anybody else. That's fun for me. And then see when they do get published where that goes and feel like you were part of that process. So there are Unpubs all over the place. I would recommend, if anyone is in an area where there are Unpubs or even protospiels, please go and test games. It's enormously helpful. We did have some other super cool questions. We're getting really good questions tonight. Chat, you guys are awesome. So Colin is asking, in one of your card games, what's the biggest difference in you've had in number of cards at the end versus at the beginning? So I think they're asking, like, do you start with a ton of cards and then whittle them down, or are you really pretty tight from the beginning when you're designing? You know exactly, I'm going to have this many cards and it's going to work this way.
For a long time, I was self-publishing card games, and I still occasionally do, on drive-through cards. And the way the pricing worked out, because I had to print rules on the cards themselves, and because of the max price point and a whole bunch of other factors, it came out that the optimal card deck for me to work within for a card game was about 49 cards. Because like 5 cards would have to be the rules and like the cover or something like that. So 49 cards became the thing, and that led me to this path of 49 is 7 divided by 7. Or 7 by 7 would make 49 cards. So maybe I can make like a card deck that has like 7 suits and like 7 ranks within that. And that led that basic structure led to like 2 completely different games. So I guess I could say, to answer Colin's question, I guess I start with the constraint, and I don't really buck out of that, at least for some card games that I'm doing on drive-through cards or what have you. I don't really buck that too much. I have done some small micro games, obviously, like one in particular. But generally, I think I tend to stay within that constraint. If it's something that I think has potential to be picked up by a proper publisher and put out there, I'm less concerned about that. I'll just kind of make the game that needs to be made and worry about the production costs a little bit later. But I think the card game structure is still so deeply ingrained in me that I worry when I have to add a tile or a meeple. Like, no. Is that gonna make it too expensive? I don't know. But like I'm fretting over one die.
Oh dear. Yeah, I can see that coming from your background. You started out kind of in production from the very beginning. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know how much things cost.
Yeah. So you've self-published a bunch of games, but were you doing that through drive-through cards instead of through Kickstarter? Why is that?
So Kickstarters are stressful. I did those first 2 role-playing games that were kickstarted, and I kickstarted like I think 1 or 2 other projects. This is like, gosh, back when Kickstarter was first getting started. So even then, like before stretch goal structures were really in place, like this is way in the primordial times of crowdfunding. Even then, I realized, wow, this is like a psychologically exhausting thing to do to get a project off the ground. And then on top of that, it was a scale of production that I didn't really feel comfortable handling all on my own. I didn't want to be a publisher. It's not really my MO. And so I thought, well, I found a print-on-demand card manufacturer in Drive-Thru Cards that had very high-quality cards, and that was all they did at the time. No boxes, no other components or anything. And they still don't do any other components. It's just cards, but now they have boxes. So that's like a big
step. Getting fancy.
Yeah. And so I decided, it's like, oh well, I'll design my games, and this is before I had really established any kind of like resume as a game designer. So I'll just put out these games. If they catch an audience, then they catch an audience. But at the very least, I'll use these very nice prototypes and pitch them to publishers. And when I pitch to publishers, I can say, hey, these are my sales. These are the reviews that the game has already had. I think it's ready to go to a bigger publisher that would have a broader reach and distribution. What do you say? And that was my plan at the time. But fate intervened, I think, a little bit. And I started getting offers from international publishers first. So my first games were published in China and Japan and Brazil, and so that complicated things when I went to American English language publishers, because like, okay, yeah, here's all the rights I'm offering, except in Japanese and Chinese and Portuguese. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's an unusual way to end up having that work out, especially if then the US publisher has to license the game from this other company and get the artwork. So is that what happened with Kodama? Because it originally, like you said, was a different game. So was it published in Japan first then?
Yes, it was called Kigi, and it was published in Japan, as a small print run as part of Tokyo Game Market, I think in 2015, if I'm remembering I think it was 2015. And so it was surreal seeing Eric Martin on Board Game Geek reviewing Tokyo Game Market and like all the cool new stuff. And then there's my little game right next to all of them. Like,
wow, that's amazing.
It was bizarre, but very fun and very fortuitous. Like, so I thought at the time, I was like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is my career. I just make my own little card games, and I don't handle English production. I don't do any of that stuff, but I can sell the licenses to these different languages. And for a little while, that was working, but the pace that is required to make these games financially viable was pretty exhausting. I spent a full year, I think, releasing, or actually a year and a half releasing one game every month, and it was. Wow. That pretty much drained me at the time. So that was when I was like, something's got to change on this. And so that's when I started refocusing a little bit more on getting some of these card games published by real publishers, getting out of the card game structure a little bit, maybe branching out into some actual boards. Yeah, I know.
Speaking of which, do you want to talk a little bit about Junk Orbit?
Yeah.
So this really is your first, I would call, board game. This is not just a card game. So that's pretty exciting. Mm-hmm. So did you consciously decide, I'm going to make something a little bit bigger? I've done card games. Let's try something else.
Yeah, actually, so the central mechanic in Junk Orbit originally started in a little card game that I can self-publish on Drive-Thru Cards, with a weird theme. It was called Penny Farthing Catapult, and it was basically the theme was that these Victorian aristocrats challenge each other to duels by launching money at each other from their catapults. And it was these catapults that were on penny farthing bicycles. So every time they catapulted something at someone else, the catapult would move backwards because it's on wheels. And it was just,
I see. Mm-hmm.
You're kind of seeing a little bit of the nascent seeds of that. But it was all just one loop, and there was no pick up and deliver element to it or anything. It was weird, but you know, that when no one, you have no one to answer to, you just kind of, your brain goes in weird places anyway.
You are not short on interesting themes.
So that whole idea, I thought, okay, there's something there that could be expanded into a proper board game. And so the first step of that was making that, using that mechanism and having some other theme that would make that theme make sense. This whole goofy thing about penny farthing and catapults was kind of fun and all, but it took as much explanation for the premise as it did for the mechanism, and I wanted to change that. So basically, the whole idea that I throw a thing, it goes a certain distance, and I move the opposite direction. That same distance was still there, but it was much easier to explain that as launching, like jettisoning something out of a spaceship. And then, I think, am I cutting out?
I think we're having some buffering issues. It looks like you're fine on our end. So what usually happens is the live chat will end up being a little bit behind, unfortunately. But by the time it usually comes back, it looks like maybe it just did. And by the time it actually posts for all of those folks who watch afterwards, it usually fixes itself. So the joys of doing things over that. But I think we're good. Yeah, so Jug Orbits, I love the central mechanic because it is so obvious and so intuitive, and it allows you to do these really cool puzzly things. So, yay, you are in space, you are a glorified trash collector. And essentially, as Daniel was explaining, you have a spaceship that's right here, and you shoot junk out this way, and your ship goes this way. And it's a pick up and deliver game. There's some set collection if you want to play on the flip side of the boards. And you kind of just orbit around these planets and pick up trash and try and deliver it to the right places in these gorgeous figure eights. And you're just flying around and grabbing stuff and shooting it. And if you hit people, then they have to drop their stuff that they have. So that makes it even better. I really like that about it. We did have one person ask earlier in the chat, and I didn't get to this quite yet, but they're asking about canister. So what's up with the shape of this?
It's a cylinder.
Do you want me to answer, or you? It is.
Oh, I didn't know if you were. I think that's more of that was a production choice on your guys' end, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it's shaped like a satellite.
Oh, right. Yes, like a mini sat. Yeah. Like a mini
sat. So I was actually at my store a couple weeks ago, and I was making this because this is not a real copy. You notice there's some obvious production issues going on here because I made this at Staples. So not a final copy, but they were asking me as I was putting this together, why is it a cylinder instead of a cube? Because I have a lot of engineering friends. And so they told me, and I have not verified this story, but they were explaining to me that there are these things called CubeSats, which are cube satellites that are very small, and the size of them is always very particular. Like there's always 1 or 2 or 4 or whatever of these things connected together to make a certain size. And the original size was based on this container that this guy had in his garage that happened to be a Beanie Baby container. And so all CubeSats are size based on Beanie Babies.
Yeah.
Which I find delightful.
It was a Beanie Baby display case. Yeah.
A display case. That's what it was.
Yeah, it's these like long rectangular things. Unfortunately, I don't think the size would really work for our game. So it's good that we have the shape that we do.
It's true. This is more like a really big satellite, right? A little mini still, but like this would be much larger than the little tiny CubeSats. Yeah. So I think that's pretty neat that this, like the packaging is funky. And I think that it's going to stand out. Like people are going to want to touch this because honestly, it's just really like nice to hold on to and feel. I know I saw you last week and you were so excited just to grab onto it and take selfies with it. And it's just very enjoyable. So I don't know. So in the chat, you guys should tell us what you think about it. I'm curious. Like if you walked into a store, would you want to pick that up versus something that's just a regular square? So we'll give you some time to talk about that in the chat. Let's see what else. People had some really good questions. So Daniel, the 1,000-year game design challenge was a cool challenge. This is from Michael Gemmel. Obviously coming from a position to avoid fads and maximum replay, how did the challenge surprise you or change you and designing?
So do you know about this, the 1,000-year game design challenge?
I'm pretty sure I've heard of this, but you should give us a little recap for everybody who doesn't know about it.
Okay. So this was a while back when I was like still trying to like think of stunts to get my name out there. But it came from a sincere place. Basically, it was this open challenge that lasted about a year, where I offered up $1,000 for a game design contest. No strings attached, no publishing contracts or anything. I just wanted to like have a big prize there, where I basically just asked designers to come up with games that they think would be still playable in 1,000 years.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, and so that in itself imposes so many just really unusual constraints on your design that I didn't think at the time were really very popular, because you can't use like really intense technology. You can't really rely on language. Common frames of reference would be a tricky thing. And so it really, you kind of like look back and think about what are the games that exist now that were played 1,000 years ago. And it was Go, and kind of that's it. Even chess wasn't really in its current form back then. I think in its current form, it's only really existed in the past like 300 years, roughly. Mm-hmm. So that's young by these standards. So it led to a lot of interesting examinations of what the future of humanity might be and what they would have accessible. Some folks were much more grim about it, and so they designed games based on just having pebbles on sand. Like that's all you would need to play some of these games. And the winner actually ended up being James Ernest from Cheap Ass Games. Yeah, he just happened to have it was entirely our judgment. Me and my wife, we kind of just looked over these games, played them, and evaluated them, and it just ended up that we really, really liked James Ernest's game. It was a weird experience in that I was unaccustomed to being the one who has to evaluate someone's work like that. And so I'm glad I did it, but the reason I really haven't done it since then is because like I'm in a much more established position in the game industry, and it didn't feel appropriate for me to be like judging these kinds of contests exactly, when I would rather be the one that helps someone make their game better or improve it or make it more presentable or accessible. Like I want more games out there, but the whole purpose of the contest is still close to my heart. I still like designs that are elegant and minimal, perhaps, but something that can translate across languages and across cultures.
Well, I also think it's really important to challenge yourself as a designer and to be challenged by other designers. That's part of why your North Carolina gaming group has been so effective and why you guys stick around. And so I think those little gaming challenges are really fun. There was another one that was something like make a game with only 9 cards. I might be getting the number wrong, but I've seen some of those floating around. Or make things that can only fit into this size box or whatever. And I think that's kind of fun. You take away some of the constraints in order to force yourself to think outside the box a little bit, which I just think that's a good idea. And I feel like you did that with yourself with Junk Orbit, because you did want to do something different. You wanted to push yourself as a designer a little bit further than you had. And you already made all these card games. So what would happen if you made a game that actually had cardboard tiles? It's an amazing thing. And pieces that moved around and interacted with each other. And I think it's fantastic. Like you really knocked it out of the park with this one. I love playing it. So I was actually at the Mox Boarding House last night. Yeah, sweet shirt. Yay! It's an amazing store in Seattle. I try and go there every time I get a chance. And now my brother lives in Seattle, so I got to go visit him. So we went out to dinner and played some games with people, and I brought Junk Orbit with me and just got to play it with regular for that just working in at the Mox Cafe. And everybody who sat down and checked it out just loved it because you can learn the game in just a few moments, and then you can play for half hour, 45 minutes, and every decision is suspenseful and exciting and puzzly, and you can't wait for it to be your turn. And so, oh my gosh, I just love this game so much. I can't wait to share it with more people. So it's coming out in June, right? That sounds good. Yes, June. So we're going to have it at Origins, which is exciting. But if you want to pick up a copy of it at Origins, basically we don't know if the boat's going to arrive. So what we're doing is we have put up a thing on our pre-order site, on our website, and Steph over at in the chat can post a link to that. And if you pre-order it, then we're going to airship those over. They're very expensive to ship, obviously, because air shipping from China is not cheap, but we will do that for as many copies as we know for sure people want. And then if you do that, you also will get a fantastic pin, which we will be posting the picture of it later, but it's going to be really neat. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. But before that, you even have another game coming out. Do you want to talk about Wonderland a little bit?
Sure, yeah. Wonderland is a little two-player strategy micro game coming out for Tabletop Day exclusively. It's fun. It's a great little two-player tactical game. You can play it like 5 minutes, and it's one that I think you'll want to play a second time, because it always takes like that first play to kind of get the hang of. Wait a minute, what? Like it's over, and you wonder what just happened. But I think it's something that I've enjoyed replaying myself. I'm just glad that it found a home.
Yeah, we're really excited to be able to put it out. I love International Tabletop Day because we're in this industry that's all about board games, and there's no other day when all of us just get together and spend time with each other and celebrate this thing that we all love. So whatever gets you to do that, we're just happy that Geek and Sundry puts the effort into organizing this thing and making it possible, because game stores are unlike a lot of other businesses in that every one of them is just owned by a person, and they're so busy trying to do all of their own regular day-to-day stuff that organizing a national event like this is just insurmountable to the average game store owner. And so we as publishers work with Geek and Sundry to do International Tabletop Day, and they go to an immense amount of effort to get these kits and extra items and all this kind of stuff to local game stores. And so we're supporting them by offering this as an exclusive. And what that really means is that if you are going to a local store who has pre-ordered this product, you'll be able to get it there. It won't be available online. You maybe won't be able to get it later. Maybe you will, but that's the first day it's going to be available. And if it sells out, we can't print any more of it. And we're sold out now. So all of those games are going to be shipping over. We're air shipping all of them from China, actually, because we needed to do it really fast. So all of them are coming over. We are going to, we're printing them right now. They're going to be here like next week. And then they're all going out to distributors and then all out to game stores, which is super, super fun. So they're all sold. If you don't find one, I'm really sorry, because we can't print them again. So go talk to your local game stores now and make sure you get them pre-ordered, because they should still theoretically be able to get some for a little bit. But it's really neat. I love that in Wonderland, it's a two-player game, and you're just placing your cards basically in a grid, and every one of the cards affects the cards next to it. And I love the design of it, because you have a little, what are the two different symbols? There's a potion bottle and then a little cake. Right?
Steph in her demos has been calling them poison and cake to make it easier to remember like what they do.
Poison and cake. But it reminds me so much of Alice in Wonderland, when she goes in the room and eating different things to try and make herself bigger or smaller. And that just makes sense in this game, because as you put a card down, it will affect the cards next to it if it has that little symbol. So like if there's a poison bottle on the top of it, they'll make whatever card is above it negative. Or 0 points. It'll diminish the point value. But if it's a little cake, then whatever is next to the cake is going to get bigger. So it is really intuitive, which I always appreciate in games. and it lasts like 15 minutes or less, and then you play it again. And it's just $12, which is also another big deal. Like usually this size game in this size box with all these components, because there's the cards and then also a really nice fancy dice bag and then the rule sheet. That would normally be a $15 game. We're just doing it for 12. So it's pretty exciting.
That dice bag looks amazing.
It's really pretty. I wish I had one to show you. Unfortunately, that's just a fake box. I'm just kidding about that. I made it like I did this one, and so I don't have any other pieces inside. But we will have copies of those going out to reviewers just right away. I think those just came in last week, so they should start popping up on the internet soon. I'm sure if there are any reviews of them, Steph will be putting those in our newsletters and posting those online. She maybe has already done that. So go check those out. But yeah, please, all of you in chat, please support Daniel by at least checking out Wonderland. It's very, very cute. Oh yeah, there we go. I should have thought about this. So Steph actually did an awesome playthrough with Chaz and posted that just today on YouTube. So you can see how the game works. She put a link in chat. So go watch that. It's awesome. She did a great job. Yeah, so cool. You have lots of stuff coming out. That's crazy. Are you excited for this year? Are you going to be like a super rock star designer after this?
I don't know about all that. Like last night, I had dinner with my wife's work friends, and so I mentioned the word playtesting, and one of them laughed because like, what is playtesting? And so like, I don't think it's gonna get to my head anytime soon.
That's pretty funny. Awesome. Yes. Let's see if we had any other big questions in chat. Oh, somebody is asking, this is from Michael Gemel, what is your favorite abstract game and what current games do you think will last? This is from when you were talking about your 1,000-year challenge.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I really like Onitama. And that's a nice blend of classic and a little more modern abstract design. That's a good one. I really like Sagrada as well. If it's more of like a puzzly kind of game. Oh, there's so many. I really like them. Okay. I think the one that may last just because they're so chunky is Hive. Those Bakelite hex pieces are gonna survive like a bajillion years. Like alien archaeologists are gonna find these things and wonder what the heck they were.
So it's going to last not because it's a good game, which it is.
I absolutely
love Hive, but it's going to last because it's made out of Bakelite. So you'll find this container that's like Hive plus Twinkies, and it'll be perfect 1,000 years from now.
Did they worship these things?
I like it. That's a great answer. Awesome. Very cool. So we have just a few minutes left. I did have one other question for me in the chat, and that was, where did the Clank dragons come from? And those actually were made in my garage by my husband. He cut out a bunch of those. They're really heavy. They're Brazilian cherry. He's a woodworker, so he figured out how to scale up the design of the regular one, cut those out, stain them, make them really super fancy. And we gave those out last year as prizes for Clank tournaments at big events. So Gen Con, Origins, and then a few other events that we went to last year. So we will be working on something that will be very exciting for the events this year. So if you like those, please make sure you check out our upcoming posted events. And if you get a chance, we would love to see you at Origins and Gen Con and PAX Unplugged and all sorts of cool events we are going to.
Are you going to be making a giant mummy trophy?
A giant mummy trophy? Ooh, that would be kind of fun. We actually did make a 5-foot tall version of the dragon and had that at our booth last year too. That was quite exciting. It had to be shipped in 2 parts. We made it out of foam core. That was a fun project. But if you
More crafting.
get excited, yeah, I do like my arts and crafts. That's pretty good. And one other thing that you guys are often waiting for in this show and are very excited about is the guess the game component. So get ready for that. Put your fingers on the keyboard. First person to guess the correct game component is going to win a copy of this game. Daniel, unfortunately, we're not able to participate. You get a 3-second lead. But I'll make you a deal and I'll send you a copy of this very shortly. How about that?
Oh, yay.
Okay, good. All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. This is a tough one this week. I'll be very interested to see who guesses this one. It is unique though. So hopefully people will figure this one out. Don't see anybody yet. Oh, Castell was a good guess, but unfortunately it is not correct.
Ooh.
Hey, it looks like you're over there. Hey, yeah, Colin, good job. That is World's Fair. So this is actually the little Ferris wheel car that you would get into to ride the very first Ferris wheel. So this goes around the track and is a round counter to determine when the end of the round is, which I really like in that game. It is by J. Alex Cavern and a very elegant, fantastic game with a really super cool theme. So Colin, please send us a message through customer service after the show and we will get a copy of that sent out to you. Let me see what else we had. A few other notes about this week. So our whole team, the last 2 weeks have been super busy for us. We have been just sending out tons and tons of finished game product or game files to be printed, like Junk Orbit. We just barely shipped that off to the factory to get printed. And so it'll be on its way very shortly. And we also went to Unpub, which was a very exciting event. We talked about a little bit. We got to see Daniel. We also got to see J. Alex Cavern. He had some cool new designs. Dan Kassar was there. Jonathan Gilmore was there. We saw so many people that we've worked with before that are just really excellent designers. List goes on and on. Plus a ton of fun media people. Glenn from Board Games and Bourbon was there. And I'm sure Steph saw lots and lots of people that she knew from the media world. And it was just a really excellent event. It's like a fun little industry party where we all get together, we all work really, really hard, and we make good games. So it's pretty neat. That happens every year in Baltimore. And if, as a player, you ever want to go out and play test, I highly recommend it. It's a blast. Let's see what else we had on here. Oh my gosh, we had so many good questions this year. Oh, another thing, we are getting the promo cards for Clank Mummy's Curse out to stores now. Slowly but surely they're arriving. So if you go to your local store and they don't have them, they can now request them from their distributor, and you should get one when you pre-order the game. And Clank Mummy's Curse is also shipping out to stores, so that's coming out April 4th, which, oh my gosh, is next week. So
Yeah.
next Wednesday.
Can't believe it.
Oh, it's so fun. I played that last night too for the first time, and it was neat to have the mummies sort of wandering around and giving curses to people and bothering everyone. But if you want to check that out yourself before it actually comes out, we are doing a giveaway for that right now as well. And Steph has that all set up on our renegadegames.com/giveaway if you want to go try and win a copy of that. So I believe that that is most of what we've been doing and have going on. We really, really appreciate you coming to join us, Daniel. It's been great getting to know a little bit about what you've been up to and how you got where you were. So if anybody has more questions for you in the future, where can they find you?
You can probably find me on Twitter, where I tweet too much. My Twitter name is @Daniel Solis. Should be easy to find. I also have a YouTube channel that just search for Daniel Solis YouTube and you'll find it. That's where I teach how to design cards. And also, if you want to find out more about the Game Designers of North Carolina, the guild that I'm part of, you can find that at gdofnc.com. That's Game Designers of North Carolina.
Very cool. That's awesome. Yes, please, everybody go check that stuff out because there's a lot of really fantastic information if you're just interested in board games in general. It's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. We're going to be back in 2 weeks. And I did want to also mention that Scott was not here tonight because he was at a science fair, which is something we should all love and appreciate. I even brought my science beaker to the show tonight to celebrate the science of satellites and science fairs in general. So there's nothing wrong. He's just out doing his fatherly duties and celebrating science. So he will rejoin us in 2 weeks. It should be fun. Well, thank you guys and have a wonderful evening, and we will see you all later. Bye.
Bye.